There are moments in life when you realize you've become a pawn in someone else's war, and the chessboard is soaked in blood you didn't spill. Isabella Romano knew that feeling the moment she saw Matteo Valentini waiting at the altar. He stood there in a black suit that probably cost more than her father's restaurant made in a year, his expression carved from granite, his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach drop. This wasn't a wedding. This was an execution dressed in white lace and expensive flowers. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Comment where you're listening from. And if you feel it was really worth it, consider becoming a member to get early access to upcoming stories. Your support makes all the difference. 3 weeks earlier, Isabella had been living a normal life. Well, as normal as life could be when your father ran a small, legitimate import business that barely kept the family afloat, and your older brother Marco had dreams bigger than his common sense. She worked as a translator for international clients, spoke 4 languages fluently, and spent her evenings reading in the tiny apartment she shared with her younger sister, Sophia. She had plans, university applications for her master's degree, a promotion at work, maybe even travel. Then Marco disappeared for 3 days and came back with a bullet wound in his shoulder and terror in his eyes. Their father, Antonio Romano, had aged 10 years in that 72 hours. Isabella had found them in the kitchen at 2 a.m., Marco bleeding onto newspapers spread across the table while their father tried to clean the wound with shaking hands. "What did you do?" she'd whispered, frozen in the doorway. Marco couldn't look at her. "Papa, what did he do?" Her father's voice had been hollow, defeated. He stole from the Valentini family. Isabella's blood had turned to ice. Everyone in their neighborhood knew the Valentini name. You didn't cross them. You didn't even look at them wrong. The Valentinis controlled everything from the docks to the politicians, from the construction contracts to the police who pretended not to see. They were the kind of family that appeared in newspapers with charitable donations and appeared in morgues with their enemies. "How much?" she'd asked, though she already knew it didn't matter. The amount was irrelevant. The crime was everything. 2 million euros, Marco had whispered. He'd thought he could skim from a shipment, replace it before anyone noticed, use the money to start his own business. He'd been caught within a week. The Valentini family had sent a message with that bullet. The next one wouldn't be a warning. Her father had spent the following days trying everything. Begging, offering payment plans, promising his business, his properties, his life. But Antonio Romano had nothing the Valentinis wanted. Nothing except a daughter. Isabella had been at work when her father called. She needed to come home immediately. Something in his voice had made her leave without explanation, running through streets that suddenly felt unfamiliar, threatening. When she arrived, there was a black Mercedes parked outside their building, the kind with tinted windows and an aura of violence barely contained. Inside, her father sat across from a man in an expensive suit, younger than she expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of cold eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. Luca Valentini, the man second in command. Marco had been there too, his face swollen from a beating, dried blood crusting at the corner of his mouth. And her mother, weeping silently in the corner. "Isabella Romano," Luca had said when she entered. It wasn't a question. "Sit down." She'd sat, her mind racing, trying to understand what negotiation could possibly involve her. "Your brother stole from us," Luca continued conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "The penalty for theft is death. Your father has offered everything he owns in exchange for your brother's life. Unfortunately, he owns nothing we want." A pause. "Nothing except you." Isabella had felt the room tilt. "What?" "Matteo Valentini has agreed to accept you as payment for your brother's debt. You will marry him. The wedding will take place in 3 weeks. You will become his wife, join his household, and your family's debt will be forgiven. The words hadn't made sense. Marry? A stranger? As payment? This is insane, she'd said. This isn't the Middle Ages. You can't trade people like property. Luca's smile had been thin, dangerous. We can do whatever we want, Miss Romano. That's what power means. The alternative is we kill your brother, burn your father's business, and destroy your family completely. Your choice. Not much of a choice. Her father had been weeping now, too, his face in his hands. Bella, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. She'd looked at Marco, at the brother who'd been her protector growing up, who'd taught her to ride a bike and scared away her first boyfriend, and promised he'd always keep her safe. He couldn't even look at her. Why? She'd asked Luca. Why would Matteo Valentini want to marry me? He doesn't even know me. Matteo has his reasons, Luca had replied, and they're not your concern. Your concern is deciding if you value your family's lives more than your freedom. The next 3 weeks had passed in a blur of surreal horror. There was a prenuptial agreement she wasn't allowed to read before signing. There were dresses delivered, expensive and beautiful and utterly meaningless. There were instructions on where she'd live, the Valentini estate outside the city, and what was expected of her: be a wife in name, make no trouble, ask no questions. Sophia had cried every night. Her mother had stopped speaking entirely, moving through the apartment like a ghost. Her father had tried to explain, to justify, to make her understand. Marco had disappeared again, unable to face what he'd cost her, and Isabella had felt herself splitting in two. Part of her was screaming, fighting, refusing to accept this nightmare. The other part was already calculating, planning, trying to figure out how to survive what was coming. She'd done research on Matteo Valentini. There wasn't much public information. He was 34, had inherited the family business when his father died 5 years ago, and had since expanded their empire into legitimate businesses, real estate, import-export, construction. He'd never been arrested, never been formally accused of anything, but everyone knew. The rumors painted him as ruthless, brilliant, completely without mercy. Men who crossed him disappeared. Businesses that competed with him burned. Women who interested him were pursued and discarded. He was handsome in the photos she found. Dark hair, strong features, the kind of face that would be attractive if it didn't radiate such cold calculation. She'd tried to find out why he'd agreed to this arrangement. What possible reason could he have for wanting to marry her specifically? Luca had mentioned Matteo had his reasons, but no one would tell her what they were. The night before the wedding, Sophia had climbed into bed with her, like she used to when they were children. "Will you be okay?" her little sister had whispered. Isabella had no answer. Now here she stood in a borrowed wedding dress, her mother's hands shaking as she adjusted the veil. The dress was beautiful, she had to admit. Ivory silk with delicate lace, fitted perfectly because they'd sent a team of seamstresses to measure her. Everything about this production was perfect, except the fundamental fact that it was a transaction, not a celebration. Her mother hadn't spoken since they arrived at the church, just kept fussing with the veil, the flowers, anything to avoid looking Isabella in the eye. Sophia stood nearby, her young face aged by grief. Papa couldn't stop apologizing, a broken record of "I'm sorry" playing on repeat, until Isabella had asked him to stop. "You look beautiful," Sophia finally whispered, "like a real bride." "I am a real bride," Isabella replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Just not a willing one." The church was small, surprisingly so. Isabella had expected something grandiose, a show of power. Instead, there were maybe 30 people scattered in the pews. She recognized none of them. Her own family took up one row. Everyone else belonged to Matteo's world. When the music started, her father offered his arm. She took it, not because tradition demanded it, but because her legs felt uncertain. They walked down the aisle together, her father's breathing ragged with suppressed emotion. And there was Matteo Valentini, waiting. Up close, he was more imposing than his photographs suggested. Tall, easily 6'2", with broad shoulders and a presence that commanded space. His face was all sharp angles, strong jaw, straight nose, lips that looked like they'd forgotten how to smile. But it was his eyes that caught her. Dark brown, almost black, and completely unreadable. He watched her approach with the focus of a predator studying prey. When she reached the altar, her father transferred her hand to Matteo's. His grip was warm, firm, impersonal. She forced herself to look at him directly, to not give him the satisfaction of seeing her fear. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. Curiosity? Assessment? She couldn't tell. The ceremony was mercifully brief. A priest spoke words about love and commitment that rang hollow in the sparse church. Matteo's responses were clear, emotionless. When it was her turn, Isabella's voice came out stronger than she expected. I do. Not because she wanted to, but because surrender and defeat were different things. You may kiss the bride. Matteo leaned in, his hand coming up to cup her jaw. For a moment, his thumb brushed her cheek, an oddly gentle gesture. Then his lips touched hers, firm and brief, a seal on a contract rather than an expression of desire. When he pulled back, that unreadable expression remained, but his eyes lingered on her face for a moment longer. The reception was at the Valentini estate, a sprawling property that looked like it belonged in a different century. Stone walls, manicured gardens, fountains that probably cost more than most people's homes. Inside was even more impressive: marble floors, artwork that belonged in museums, a grand staircase that split in two directions, like something from a movie. Isabella's family looked terrified and out of place. They were shepherded to a corner, given expensive wine they were too nervous to drink, treated like necessary inconveniences. Matteo's people ignored them entirely. She stood beside her new husband during a dinner she couldn't eat, her hand occasionally claimed by his when photographs were taken. He played the role of attentive groom for the cameras, but when the photographers left, his attention went elsewhere, to quiet conversations with men in expensive suits, to Luca, who appeared periodically with whispered updates. Isabella was decoration. She understood that. What she didn't understand was why he needed a wife at all, and why it had to be her. As the evening wore on, she watched him. Matteo Valentini in his element was something to see. He commanded every room he entered. Men deferred to him automatically. Women watched him with a mixture of desire and fear. He spoke softly, but everyone listened. He smiled occasionally, but it never reached his eyes. This was a man completely in control of himself, of everyone around him, of the world he'd built. Finally, as the last guests departed, Luca approached them. "Your family is leaving," he told Isabella. "You should say goodbye." She found them gathered near the entrance, her mother's eyes red from crying, Sophia clinging to her arm, Marco standing apart looking at the floor, and her father trying to maintain dignity while his world collapsed. "I'll be fine," Isabella told them, lying with every word. "This is just an arrangement. It doesn't mean anything." Sophia threw her arms around her. "I'll miss you so much." "I'll find a way to visit," Isabella promised, having no idea if that was true. She hugged each of them, memorizing the feeling, not knowing when or if she'd see them again. When Marco finally approached, she couldn't hide her anger. "This is your fault," she said quietly. "You did this to me." "I know," he whispered. "I'll make it right somehow. There's no making this right. Just keep them safe. That's all you can do now." After they left, the estate felt even larger and emptier. Staff moved through rooms cleaning up, their movements practiced and silent. Isabella stood in the grand foyer, still in her wedding dress, feeling utterly lost. Matteo appeared on the staircase. "Come with me." He led her up the stairs, down a hallway lined with paintings of people she assumed were his ancestors, all of them looking stern and judgmental. He stopped at a door, opened it. "This is your room." The bedroom was enormous, decorated in soft creams and golds. A four-poster bed dominated the space. French doors led to a balcony. There was a sitting area, a desk, a bathroom she could see through an open door that was bigger than her old bedroom. "My room is next door," Matteo continued in that same emotionless tone. "There's a connecting door, but it will remain locked. You have freedom of the estate and grounds. Staff will provide anything you need. You may contact your family once a week under supervision. You will attend events with me as required and present as a devoted wife. Otherwise, stay out of my way." Isabella turned to face him. "Why?" His expression didn't change. "Why what? Why did you agree to this arrangement? Why me specifically? What do you want from me?" For the first time, something like emotion crossed his face. "Not much. Just remember what's happening here." He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the suddenly smaller feeling room. "You are payment for a debt. Your brother stole from me. Your family owed me blood. I chose to take you instead because you serve a purpose. What purpose? That's not your concern." He turned toward the door. "Get some rest. Tomorrow you start learning how to be a Valentini wife." "Wait," she called. He paused. "We're married now. Don't I deserve to know why?" He looked back at her, and for just a moment, she saw something dark and complicated in his eyes. "You deserve nothing, Isabella. You're here because your family made you a bargaining chip. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." Then he was gone. Isabella didn't sleep that night. She stood on the balcony watching dawn break over grounds that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale, except fairy tales didn't trap their princesses in gilded cages. The wedding dress hung in the closet now, replaced by a silk nightgown someone had left, folded on the bed. She'd found her belongings, what few items her family had been, allowed to send, arranged in drawers and closets. Someone had unpacked for her, organized her life without permission. A maid arrived at 7 with breakfast on a silver tray. Isabella tried to refuse it, but the young woman, maybe 20, with nervous eyes, had insisted. "Signora Valentini, you must eat. Mr. Valentini has instructed that you be well cared for." "Did he also instruct that I be kept prisoner?" The maid's eyes widened with fear. "Please, Signora, I'm only doing my job." Isabella felt immediate guilt. "I'm sorry. What's your name?" "Lucia, Signora. I've worked here for 3 years. I'll be assigned to attend to your needs." "Lucia, I don't need a servant. I can take care of myself." "Nevertheless, those are my instructions." She left the tray and departed quickly, leaving Isabella alone with coffee and pastries she had no appetite for. The day stretched ahead empty and terrifying. She explored her room thoroughly, finding expensive clothes in her size, filling the closet, all chosen by someone who'd never met her. Conservative dresses, elegant blouses, designer labels, everything in muted colors. Nothing that suggested personality or choice. The connecting door to Matteo's room was indeed locked. She tried it once, not knowing what she'd do if it opened, but it didn't budge. By mid-morning, boredom and defiance drove her to explore the estate. No one stopped her as she wandered hallways lined with art and history. She found a library that took her breath away. Thousands of books on floor-to-ceiling shelves, leather armchairs, tall windows overlooking gardens. She found a music room with a grand piano. She found sitting rooms and dining rooms, and rooms whose purpose she couldn't determine. She also found Matteo's office. The door was open, and she could see him inside, sitting at a massive desk, papers spread before him, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking rapid Italian, his tone sharp and commanding. He looked up as she passed, their eyes meeting for a moment. He didn't smile, didn't acknowledge her beyond that look, then returned to his conversation. Isabella kept walking, her heart pounding harder than the moment warranted. That afternoon, Luca found her in the library. He entered without knocking, his presence immediately making the peaceful space feel threatened. "Mrs. Valentini, you're settling in. Is that what this is?" "Settling in? It's whatever you make of it. Matteo has asked me to explain certain rules. I think he made the rules clear last night." Luca sat across from her uninvited. "Perhaps. But let me be more specific. You are now part of the Valentini family. That means you represent us in everything you do. Your behavior reflects on Matteo. Any scandal, any indiscretion, any hint of disloyalty will have consequences, not just for you, but for your family. Is that a threat? It's a clarification." Isabella closed her book. "What exactly does Matteo expect from me?" Luca studied her with those cold, calculating eyes. "Public appearances. You'll attend events, charity galas, business dinners. You'll smile, look devoted, play the role of the loving wife. You'll be photographed, interviewed occasionally. You'll give the Valentini family a softer image. So I'm a prop. You're an asset. And the rest of the time, stay out of trouble. Don't ask questions about business. Don't interfere with operations. Be available when Matteo needs you and invisible when he doesn't. What about my own life? My work? My friends? Your life is here now. As for work, that's no longer necessary. Friends can visit with approval, though I'd advise limiting contact with your previous life. It makes the transition easier." Isabella felt rage building. "You've taken everything from me." "We've given you everything," Luca corrected. "Look around. Most women would kill for this life. Most women chose their lives. Did you choose yours?" The question hung between them. Something shifted in Luca's expression, not quite sympathy, but perhaps recognition. "No," he finally said. "None of us chose this. We were born into it. At least you can leave if you want." "Leave? You're not a prisoner, Mrs. Valentini. You can walk out that door any time. Of course, if you do, the arrangement is void. Your family's debt returns. Your brother dies. Your father loses everything. But technically, you're free to go." Isabella's hands clenched. "That's not freedom. That's extortion. That's reality." He stood. "First public appearance is Friday. Charity gala. Lucia will help you prepare. Matteo expects you to be perfect." After Luca left, Isabella sat in the library for hours, watching light move across the floor as the day progressed. She thought about running. The estate wasn't guarded like a prison. She could probably make it to the gates, maybe even into the city. And then what? Her family would suffer. Marco would die. Everything her father had built would be destroyed. Sophia's future would be ruined. She was trapped, not by locks and guards, but by love and obligation. The cruelest cage of all. That evening, she was summoned to dinner, a formal affair in a dining room that could seat 30, but held only 2. Matteo sat at the head of the table, she at the side nearest him. Staff served courses she barely tasted. For the first time since the wedding, they were alone together without audience. They ate in silence for several minutes. Finally, Matteo spoke. "Luca tells me you understand the expectations. I understand I'm a prisoner with better accommodations than most. You're not a prisoner. I'm sure he explained. Yes, I can leave any time, as long as I'm willing to let my family be destroyed. Matteo set down his wine glass. Your brother made choices. Choices have consequences. I didn't make those choices. No, you didn't. Yet here we are. Isabella looked at him directly. You could have just taken the money. My father would have found a way to pay eventually. Your father has nothing. He would have worked until he died and never paid half the debt. Instead, you have this life. This life, she repeated bitterly. Do you even hear yourself? I'm 26 years old. I had plans, dreams, a future. You took all of that. I saved your family. You enslaved me. His eyes hardened. You have no idea what slavery looks like. You have luxury most people can't imagine. You want for nothing. All that's asked is you play a role a few times a month and otherwise do whatever you please. I want my freedom. Freedom is overrated. Most people don't know what to do with it anyway. Isabella laughed, sharp and humorless. Is that what you tell yourself? That you're doing me a favor? I don't need to tell myself anything. I know what I am and what I'm not. And what are you? A man who honors his agreements. Your brother stole from me. The penalty was death. I offered an alternative. Your family accepted. Now we all live with that choice. Why me, though? She pressed. You still haven't answered that. Why did you specifically want me as your wife? What purpose do I serve? Matteo was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. I need a wife for business reasons. You were available. It's that simple. You're lying. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Careful. I may have offered your family mercy, but that doesn't mean you can speak to me without respect. I don't respect men who buy women like property. Then you'll have a difficult time in this world, because men like me are everywhere. He stood, throwing his napkin on the table. This conversation is over. Matteo, wait. She surprised herself using his first name. He paused. At least tell me what you expect from me beyond the public appearances. What kind of wife am I supposed to be? The kind who doesn't ask questions I won't answer. He left her sitting alone at the enormous table, surrounded by half-eaten food, and staff who wouldn't meet her eyes. The next few days established a pattern. Isabella woke to breakfast she didn't want, spent hours exploring the estate and grounds, and ate dinners with a husband who barely spoke to her. Matteo was often gone during the day, and when he was home, he remained in his office. They were two strangers sharing space, nothing more. Friday came too quickly. Lucia arrived early with a team of people, hairstylist, makeup artist, someone whose job was apparently choosing jewelry. They transformed Isabella into someone she barely recognized in the mirror. The dress was midnight blue, elegant and expensive, cut to suggest rather than reveal. The jewelry was real, diamonds that probably cost more than her father's annual income. Her hair was swept up in a style that made her look older, sophisticated, untouchable. When she descended the stairs, Matteo was waiting in the foyer. He wore a tuxedo like he was born in it, all sharp lines and controlled power. His eyes swept over her, assessing. Acceptable, he said. High praise from Isabella replied dryly. His lips twitched, almost a smile. In the car, he laid out expectations. We've been married a week. People will expect us to appear happy, devoted. When we arrive, I'll have my hand at your back or holding yours. You'll smile, laugh at my comments even if they're not funny, and look at me like you chose this. I'm not an actress. You'll learn. What if someone asks how we met? Tell them it was arranged by our families. Love at first sight. Some will find that romantic. Others will know the truth, but won't say it. Either way, the story is, we're happy. And if I can't pull it off, If I can't pretend to be madly in love with a man who bought me, then your family suffers the consequences." He said it so casually, as if discussing the weather. That was his power, the absolute certainty that he could and would follow through on any threat. The gala was held at a historic hotel, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers. Photographers waited outside, flashbulbs popping as they arrived. Matteo's hand was indeed at her back, possessive and warm through the thin fabric of her dress. He guided her through the crowd with practiced ease. To cameras, to observers, they looked perfect together. She smiled until her face hurt. She let him introduce her to politicians and businessmen and society women who sized her up with calculating eyes. She laughed at his rare comments. She played the devoted bride. And she hated every second. But she was good at it. Years of translating had taught her to read people, to adapt her tone and manner to her audience. She channeled that skill now, becoming whatever each person expected Matteo Valentini's wife to be. Demure with the old guard, sophisticated with the young social climbers, intelligent but not threatening with the men, friendly but not too warm with the women. "You're a natural," Luca murmured at one point when Matteo was pulled aside for business talk. At what? Deception. She looked at him. "We're all deceiving someone here, aren't we? You, Matteo, everyone in this room. We're all pretending to be better than we are." Luca's smile was thin. "Perhaps. But you do it better than most." During dinner, seated beside Matteo at a table with industry leaders and their wives, Isabella felt his hand cover hers on the table. A gesture for show, she knew, but his thumb stroked across her knuckles in a way that felt almost unconscious. She glanced at him. He was engaged in conversation about shipping contracts, his attention seemingly elsewhere. Yet his thumb continued that small movement, and she felt her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. After dinner, there was dancing. Matteo led her to the floor as if it were just another negotiation to win. His hand settled at her waist, holding her closer than strictly necessary. Her hand rested on his shoulder, feeling the strength beneath the expensive fabric. They moved together smoothly, and she realized he was an excellent dancer. "You never mentioned you could dance," she said quietly. "You never asked." "There's a lot we don't know about each other. That was your choice, not mine." "Was it?" He looked down at her. "You could ask me anything. Would you answer?" "Probably not. At least you're honest about your dishonesty." His almost smile appeared again. "You're not what I expected. And what did you expect? Someone more compliant. Someone who'd accept her fate quietly." Isabella met his eyes. Disappointed? Intrigued. Something in the way he said it made her breath catch. His hand tightened slightly at her waist, pulling her incrementally closer. This close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. She could see flecks of lighter brown in his dark eyes. She could feel the warmth of his body against hers. "It would be easy to hate you," she whispered. But you're not as simple as I want you to be. Neither are you." The song ended. They stood on the dance floor, still holding each other, while other couples moved around them. Then Matteo stepped back, the moment breaking. "We should circulate." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. More introductions, more conversations, more performance. By the time they left, Isabella was exhausted from smiling, from pretending, from being someone she wasn't. In the car, the silence felt heavier than before. She was intensely aware of Matteo beside her, his presence filling the space. At the estate, he walked her to her door, an oddly formal gesture given they were married. "You did well tonight," he said. "Thank you for not making it difficult." What a ringing endorsement. "I mean it. Many women in your position would have caused scenes, made demands, tried to embarrass me publicly." The thought crossed my mind. "Why didn't you?" She looked at him. Because my family's safety is more important than my pride. That's not the only reason. No? Then what? He studied her face for a long moment. Because despite everything, you have honor. You keep your word even when it costs you. That's rare. Isabella didn't know what to say to that. Good night, Mrs. Valentini. Good night. She watched him walk to his own door, disappear inside. Then she entered her room and finally let the mask fall. She stood in the middle of the floor, still in her expensive dress and borrowed jewelry, and felt the weight of her new life settling over her like a shroud. But mixed with the despair was something else. Something she didn't want to examine too closely. That moment on the dance floor when Matteo had looked at her like she was more than just a transaction. When his thumb had stroked her hand with unconscious tenderness. When he'd called her honorable. She was in terrible danger, she realized. Not from Matteo's threats or his family's power, but from something far more insidious. The possibility that she might actually start to care what he thought of her. The following weeks established an uneasy routine. Isabella attended events with Matteo, playing the perfect wife for audiences that never suspected the truth. Between public appearances, they existed in the same house like polite strangers, orbiting each other without truly connecting. But something was shifting. Small things, barely noticeable at first. Matteo started having coffee in the morning room where Isabella took her breakfast, not speaking, but present. She'd find books on her nightstand that she'd mentioned wanting to read. Once, when she fell asleep in the library, she woke to find a blanket draped over her shoulders. Lucia mentioned Mr. Valentini had covered her before leaving for a meeting. Isabella tried not to read meaning into these gestures, but she found herself watching for Matteo in ways she couldn't justify. Noticing when he looked tired, when tension lined his shoulders, when something almost like genuine emotion crossed his face. One evening, she heard music drifting through the house. Following it, she found Matteo at the piano in the music room. His hands moved across the keys with unexpected grace, pulling haunting melodies from the instrument. He was so absorbed, he didn't notice her standing in the doorway. The piece was melancholic, beautiful, filled with a longing that made her chest ache. When he finally looked up and saw her, his hand stilled on the keys. "I didn't mean to interrupt," she said. "It's fine, I was just—" He trailed off. That was beautiful. What was it? Something my mother used to play. Isabella stepped further into the room. "I didn't know you were so talented. There's a lot you don't know about me. That seems to be your favorite phrase. Maybe because it's true." She sat on the bench beside him, maintaining careful distance. "Then tell me something. Help me understand who you really are. Why would you want to understand? Because I'm married to you. Because we're stuck with each other. Because pretending you're just a monster is exhausting, and I suspect it's not entirely true." Matteo's fingers touched the keys again, playing soft notes. "My mother loved music. She played every evening. My father hated it, thought it was weak, a waste of time. But she played anyway. It was her small rebellion." "What happened to her?" "She died when I was 16. Cancer. My father didn't let her go to the hospital until it was too late. Said Valentini's don't show weakness. By the time she got treatment, there was nothing they could do." Isabella heard the pain beneath the carefully neutral words. "I'm sorry." Matteo continued playing, the notes melancholic. "She was the only soft thing in my life. After she died, my father made sure I understood that softness was a liability. He trained me to be hard, calculating, merciless, everything a Valentini man should be. Do you believe that? That softness is a liability." He looked at her then, really looked at her. "In my world, yes, softness gets you killed. But sometimes, late at night, I play her music, and pretend there's another way to live. That must be lonely. It's necessary. They sat in silence while Matteo played. Isabella felt something crack in her carefully maintained distance. This man who'd bought her like property, who held her family hostage, who showed the world nothing but cold calculation, had this hidden depth of feeling. It should have made her angrier. Instead, it made him human. "Thank you for telling me that," she said quietly, "about your mother." "Don't mistake honesty for connection," he replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "We're still just fulfilling an arrangement." "Of course." But the words felt hollow to both of them. The next morning, Isabella found Matteo in his office, the door uncharacteristically open. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, tie loosened, hair disheveled from running his hands through it. "Rough night?" she ventured from the doorway. "Business complications." He rubbed his temples. "Nothing you need to concern yourself with. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Food?" He glanced up, surprise flickering across his face. "Why would you do that? Maybe I don't like seeing you suffer, even if you did buy me. Maybe playing the caring wife is becoming habit. Or maybe, despite everything, I'm not as heartless as I pretend to be." Something shifted in his expression. Coffee would be nice. She returned 20 minutes later with espresso and the pastries she'd learned he liked, but rarely ate. He accepted both with what might have been gratitude. "You didn't have to do this." "I know." They shared the coffee in surprisingly comfortable silence. Isabella studied him, this complicated man who was her husband. There was something about him in this moment, vulnerable with exhaustion, guard momentarily lowered. He looked younger, almost approachable. "Matteo," she began, "can I ask you something? I probably won't answer. Why did you really marry me? I mean the real reason, not the business explanation." His eyes met hers, dark and intense. "You won't let that go, will you? I deserve to know. You deserve many things you won't get." He set down his cup. "But I'll tell you this much. My father's legacy cast a long shadow. Everyone in our world sees me as his son. Brutal, cold, exactly what a Valentini should be. That reputation serves me well in business. But there are deals, alliances, opportunities that require a different image, a softer approach. You married me for image rehabilitation? In part. A devoted marriage humanizes me, makes me seem less dangerous, opens doors that stay closed to obvious monsters. So I'm a prop after all. You're a strategic asset. But you're also," he paused, choosing words carefully, "more than I anticipated you'd be." "Meaning?" "Meaning you're intelligent, capable, perceptive. You play your role better than I hoped. You make people comfortable, make them want to do business with me, because you suggest I might be more civilized than my reputation. That's it? That's all I am to you? A tool for making people comfortable?" He was quiet for a moment. "What else would you be?" Isabella stood. "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Thank you for the honesty, at least." She turned to leave. "Isabella," she paused. "Yes? If circumstances were different, if we'd met another way, maybe you could have been more. But we are who we are, trapped by history and choices neither of us made." "I know," she said softly. "Believe me, I know." That afternoon, everything changed. Isabella was in the garden, trying to find peace among the roses, when Lucia rushed out, face pale with fear. "Signora, you need to come quickly. Your family, there's been an incident." Isabella's heart stopped. "What happened?" "Your father's restaurant. There was a fire. They're all at the hospital. Sophia was hurt." The world tilted. Isabella ran inside, finding Luca in the foyer. "I need to go to them. Now." "That's not possible. The security arrangements." "I don't care about your security arrangements. My sister is hurt." She was screaming now, months of controlled composure shattering. My family needs me. You're a Valentini now, Luca said firmly. You don't run off without proper protection and authorization. Authorization? Isabella felt rage she'd never known consuming her. They're my family. I need authorization to see my injured sister? Where's Matteo? In a meeting that can't be interrupted. Then interrupt it. Or get out of my way because I'm leaving whether you authorize it or not. She pushed past him, heading for the front door. Luca grabbed her arm. Mrs. Valentini, don't make this difficult. She spun on him. My sister is 13 years old and she's in a hospital. Nothing you say will stop me from getting to her. Do what you have to do, but I'm leaving. Now. For a moment, they stood locked in a battle of wills. Then Luca's expression shifted slightly. I'll drive you, but we do this properly. Security, armed escort, and Matteo will be informed. Fine. Just hurry. The hospital was 30 minutes away. Every minute felt eternal. Isabella's mind raced with terrible possibilities. How badly was Sophia hurt? Was everyone else okay? How had the fire started? When they arrived, her family was in a waiting room. Her mother rushed to her, embracing her tightly. Thank God you came. They said you might not be allowed. Where's Sophia? She's in surgery. Something fell during the fire. She has a broken arm, some burns. They say she'll be okay, but they needed to operate. Isabella felt tears she'd been holding for weeks finally spill over. And everyone else. Papa has some smoke inhalation. Marco's fine. But Bella, the restaurant, it's gone. Everything destroyed. How did it start? Her mother's face crumpled. They don't know yet. The investigators are looking, but everything happened so fast. One moment we were preparing for dinner service. The next, the kitchen was engulfed. Marco stood apart, his face twisted with guilt. This is my fault. More consequences of what I did. You don't know that, Isabella said. This could have been an accident. But she didn't believe it, and neither did he. Hours passed. Isabella sat with her family, Luca hovering nearby with his security team, clearly uncomfortable in the emotional atmosphere. Finally, a doctor emerged. Sophia would be fine. The surgery went well. She'd need time to recover, but there'd be no permanent damage. Isabella was allowed to see her. Sophia looked so small in the hospital bed, her arm in a cast, bandages on her shoulder and neck. But her eyes opened when Isabella entered. Bella, she whispered. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. I was so scared. The fire came out of nowhere. Mama screamed and Papa tried to put it out, but it spread too fast. Something fell and I couldn't get out of the way. You're safe now. That's all that matters. Are you okay? I mean, with him. With your husband. He didn't hurt you for coming here? No, Isabella lied, not wanting to burden her sister with the truth. He understands family comes first. She stayed until Sophia fell asleep, then returned to the waiting room. Her father pulled her aside. The investigators, he said quietly. They're calling it arson. Someone deliberately set that fire. But who? Who would do this to us? Isabella's blood ran cold. She thought of the Valentini family, of the carefully controlled violence they represented, of the fact that her family's debt had been paid with her, unless someone decided it wasn't enough. I don't know, Papa, but I'm going to find out. She left the hospital with Luca as night fell. In the car, she turned to him. Was it you? Did the Valentini family do this? Luca looked genuinely surprised. What? No. The debt was settled. We don't go back on our agreements. Then who? There are other families. People who might think your father's connection to us makes him a target. Or people who resent the Valentini family's reach and power. This could be someone sending a message to Matteo through your family. Isabella felt sick. So my family was attacked because I married Matteo. It's one possibility. We're investigating. When they reached the estate, Matteo was waiting. He took one look at Isabella's face and dismissed Luca. Then, unexpectedly, he pulled her into his office, poured her a drink she didn't want, but accepted anyway. Tell me what happened. She told him everything. The fire, Sophia's injuries, the arson investigation. He listened without interruption, his expression growing darker. Your family will be taken care of, he finally said. Medical bills, housing until the restaurant is rebuilt, everything. And I'll find out who did this. How can you be sure it wasn't someone from your family? Someone who thinks my father still owes you something? Because I gave my word the debt was settled. Anyone working for me knows that's final. If they violated that, they'd answer to me. He moved to his desk, already making calls, mobilizing resources. Within minutes, he'd arranged for private security for her family, a suite at a luxury hotel for them to stay in, while the apartment above the destroyed restaurant was uninhabitable, and contacts with investigators. Isabella watched him work with ruthless efficiency. This was Matteo Valentini in his element, commanding and absolute. When he finished, he found her still standing there, drink untouched. You didn't have to do all that. Yes, I did. They're your family. That makes them my responsibility now. Even though you never wanted this marriage, even though I'm just a strategic asset. He crossed to her, standing closer than he ever had. You may have started as a transaction, Isabella, but you stopped being just that weeks ago. Then what am I? He reached out, his hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. You're my wife, and I protect what's mine. The words should have angered her, the possessiveness, the assumption. But there was something in his eyes, something fierce and genuine. He meant it. And more terrifying, she believed him. When he dropped his hand, she felt the loss of his touch. Thank you, she said quietly, for helping them, for letting me go to them. You were going regardless. Luca said you were going to physically fight your way out if necessary. I meant what I said. They're my family. I know. His voice was soft. I know what family means, what you'd sacrifice for them. It's part of why he stopped. Why what? Why I don't regret choosing you. Isabella felt something shift between them. The careful distance they'd maintained was crumbling. Standing here in his office, after the horror of the day, being cared for by a man who'd bought her, she felt a connection that terrified her. I should get some rest, she said. Big day tomorrow, visiting hours and all. She moved toward the door. Isabella, she turned back. Yes? I'm glad your sister is okay. The softness in his voice nearly undid her. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and fled to her room. That night, Isabella lay awake thinking about Matteo's hands on her face, the genuine concern in his eyes, the way he'd mobilized his entire organization to help her family without hesitation. She was falling for him. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She was falling for the man who'd bought her like property, who held her family's safety over her head, who'd forced her into a marriage she never wanted. It was Stockholm Syndrome, she told herself, a survival mechanism. She was convincing herself to care for her captor because it made the cage bearable. But it felt like more than that. It felt like seeing someone's true self beneath the armor they showed the world, like recognizing a kindred spirit trapped by circumstances and expectations, like something real, and that terrified her more than anything the Valentini family could do. The next morning, Matteo appeared at breakfast. He'd arranged for her to spend the day at the hospital with her family, security included, but discreet. Thank you, she said. He nodded, then hesitated. Isabella, about last night. What I said. You don't need to explain, I want to. He sat across from her. I've spent my whole life being trained to see people as assets or threats. Nothing else. No middle ground. My father beat compassion out of me. Literally. Any softness was punished. Any emotional connection was weakness to exploit. By the time I was 20, I'd learned to feel nothing. That must have been lonely. It was necessary. He looked at her directly. And then you came into my life. This woman I acquired as payment for a debt, who was supposed to be just another tool in my arsenal. But you kept being human. Real. You challenged me, questioned me, refused to be just a prop. And that piano night, when you asked about my mother, something I'd buried for years cracked open. He paused. I don't know how to do this, Isabella. I don't know how to be married to someone I actually see as a person rather than a possession. Do this? This, he gestured between them. Whatever this is becoming. Because it's not just an arrangement anymore, at least not for me. Isabella's heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want you to just be a strategic asset. I'm saying when I saw you breaking down yesterday about your sister, I wanted to fix it. Not because it was convenient, but because seeing you hurt made me hurt. I'm saying this marriage may have started as a transaction, but I don't want it to stay that way. What do you want it to be? He stood, moved around the table, pulled her to her feet. His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. I want it to be real. The kiss was nothing like their wedding kiss. That had been performative, a seal on a contract. This was something else entirely. His lips met hers with hunger and tenderness mixed together, asking and demanding simultaneously. Isabella's hands came up to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palms. She should push him away. Should remember this man had stolen her life. Should hold on to her anger and resentment like armor. Instead, she kissed him back. Her fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer. His arms wrapped around her, one hand sliding into her hair, the other at her waist, holding her against him. The kiss deepened, weeks of tension and denied attraction igniting between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Matteo rested his forehead against hers. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Tell me you feel it too. Isabella knew she should lie, should protect herself, should maintain the walls between them. I feel it, she whispered instead. I've been trying not to, but I feel it. His smile was genuine, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less burdened. They stood there, holding each other in the morning light, two people who'd started as prisoner and captor, finding something neither expected. This doesn't change the fact that you bought me, Isabella said, that you took away my choice, that my family is still leverage hanging over my head. I know. His hands tightened on her, and I can't undo that. I can't go back and meet you differently. Can't pretend this started any way but the worst way possible. All I can do is try to be different going forward. How? She pulled back to look at him. How do we make this real when the foundation is so broken? We build something new. On top of the broken foundation, we construct something better. Day by day, choice by choice. His hand cupped her face. I can't give you back the freedom I took. But I can give you choice now. You can leave if you want. Right now. I'll make sure your family is protected regardless. No debt, no leverage. Just a clean break if that's what you need. You mean that? I mean it. If staying with me is only about protecting them, then you're still a prisoner. I don't want that. I want you to stay because you choose to, not because you have to. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. You understand what you're offering? That I might actually leave? Yes, and it terrifies me more than anything I've faced. But if you stay now, knowing you could go, then maybe we have a chance at something real. She thought about walking away, returning to her old life, starting over, being free. The possibility was intoxicating. But she also thought about Matteo playing piano in the dark, about his grief for his mother, about the way he'd dropped everything to help her family, about the vulnerability in his eyes right now. "I'll stay," she said, his breath released in a rush, "but on one condition. Anything. No more secrets. If we're building something real, I need to know who you really are, what you do, what you're involved in. I need to understand your world. That's dangerous. Ignorance is more dangerous. If I'm truly part of this family, I should know what that means." Matteo studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. But once you know, you can't unknow it. You'll be complicit in everything I am. I think I already am. Fair enough." He took her hand. "But first, go see your family. We'll talk more tonight." At the hospital, Sophia was awake and in better spirits. Isabella spent hours with her family, and for the first time since the wedding, didn't feel the weight of her imprisonment. Matteo's offer had changed something fundamental. She wasn't staying because she had to. She was staying because she chose to. That evening, true to his word, Matteo opened his world to her. In his office with the door locked, he showed her the books, the legitimate businesses that fronted the family operation, the shipping routes that moved legal goods and illegal ones, the politicians they owned, the judges in their pocket, the police who looked the other way. "I'm not just a businessman," he said. "I'm the head of a criminal organization that's been operating for 3 generations. We control ports, construction, unions. We launder money, traffic goods, facilitate deals that can't happen legally." Isabella listened without judgment, watching him reveal truths he'd kept hidden. "Does it bother you?" he asked, "knowing what I really am?" "It should. But it doesn't?" "I don't know." She touched the ledgers. "It's a lot to process. You asked for honesty. This is it. I'm not a good man, Isabella. I've done terrible things. Hurt people who crossed me. Made decisions that ruined lives. But yes, you also help people. Protect families in your territory. Have rules about certain lines you won't cross. I've been watching, listening at the events. You're not as evil as you want people to think. Maybe. Or maybe I'm exactly as evil as I need to be to survive in this world." Isabella moved closer to him. "I don't believe that. I think you're a man who was shaped by violence and loss, who learned to be hard because softness got people killed. But underneath, there's still the boy who loved his mother's piano music. That boy died a long time ago." "Did he? Then who kissed me this morning? Who mobilized everything to help my family? Who's showing me these secrets right now?" Matteo pulled her into his lap, his arms encircling her. "You see too much. Maybe you don't see enough." She kissed him, and this time, there was no hesitation from either of them. His hands moved over her with growing urgency, months of tension finally being released. When they pulled apart, both breathless, he looked at her with something like wonder. "We shouldn't rush this. We have time." "Actually," she said, her fingers working at his tie, "I think we've been waiting long enough. Are you sure? Because once we cross this line, we already crossed the line this morning. This is just acknowledging where we already are." He carried her to the sofa, their kisses deepening. His hands found the zipper of her dress, while her fingers threaded through his hair. This was nothing like she'd imagined, nothing like the clinical transaction she'd feared when she first became his wife. This was passion and tenderness mixed together, a claiming and a surrender happening simultaneously. Matteo worshipped her body with hands that shook slightly, revealing his own vulnerability. When they finally came together, Isabella gasped at the intensity. Not from pain, though there was a moment of discomfort, but from the overwhelming intimacy of it. his forehead pressed against hers, his dark eyes locked on her face, watching every reaction. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you." They moved together, finding rhythm, building heat. Isabella had never felt so completely present in her body, so utterly seen. When pleasure crested, she cried out his name and felt him follow moments later, his own control shattering. Afterward, they lay tangled together, his jacket somewhere on the floor, her dress pooled around her waist, both of them breathing hard. "That was," Matteo began. Unexpected, Isabella finished, but not unwelcome. He looked at her, brushing hair from her face. "No regrets?" "Not about this. About how we started, yes. But this moment?" No regrets. They eventually made their way upstairs, to Matteo's room rather than her own. The connecting door they'd kept locked was finally opened. They made love again, slower this time, exploring each other with more patience. Learning what made the other gasp, moan, arch into touch. Isabella discovered Matteo's control had limits, that beneath the cold exterior was a man capable of desperate passion. He discovered Isabella's strength extended to the bedroom, that she met him as an equal, demanding her own pleasure as much as giving his. As dawn approached, they lay in his bed, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we figure out how to actually be married, for real this time." "What does that look like?" "I don't know." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "I've never done this before. Had a real relationship. Neither have I." "Not really." "Then we'll figure it out together. Make mistakes, probably. But at least we'll be making them honestly." Isabella tilted her head to look at him. "I need to know something. The fire at my father's restaurant. Have you found out who did it?" His expression darkened. "We're close. There's a rival family, the Rossis, who've been pushing into our territory. They probably thought attacking your family would send a message, show they're not afraid of me. What will you do when you find them?" "What I always do, handle it." "That's not an answer." Isabella sat up. "If we're really doing this, being honest with each other, I need to know. Are you going to kill them?" His jaw tightened. "Would it bother you if I did?" "Yes. But I also understand your world has different rules than mine. So I'm asking, what's going to happen?" Matteo was quiet for a long moment. "The men who ordered the fire will face consequences. Severe ones. But I won't kill them unless I have to. I'll send a different message. One that makes it clear attacking you or your family brings down more trouble than it's worth. That's the most I can promise." "Fair enough." She lay back down against him. "I can live with that." Over the next weeks, their relationship transformed. They still maintained public appearances, but now the devotion wasn't entirely fake. Matteo was surprisingly attentive, bringing her coffee in the morning, asking about her day, genuinely listening to her answers. He took her to see her family regularly, no longer requiring security justifications. He introduced her to the legitimate side of his business, asking her opinion on deals and strategies. Isabella discovered she had a talent for reading people, for knowing who could be trusted and who couldn't. Her language skills proved invaluable in international negotiations. Slowly, she became not just his wife, but his partner. The Rossi situation was resolved through a combination of political pressure, economic warfare, and one very pointed conversation where Matteo made clear that Isabella Romano Valentini was completely off limits. Anyone who touched her or her family would face destruction so complete their name would become a cautionary tale. It worked. The attacks stopped. Her father's restaurant was rebuilt, better than before, with security that would make Fort Knox jealous. Sophia recovered fully. Her arm healed, and only small scars remained from the burns. Life settled into a new rhythm, Isabella still had moments of anger about how their relationship started. There were arguments, times when old resentment surfaced. But Matteo never dismissed her feelings, never told her to get over it. He acknowledged what he'd done, apologized for it genuinely, and worked every day to be worthy of her choice to stay. 6 months after the wedding, Isabella realized she was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not the performance she'd put on at first, but real contentment. She was falling in love with her husband, and he was falling in love with her. One evening, they were in the music room. Matteo at the piano, Isabella curled in a chair nearby with a book. The scene was domestic, peaceful, everything she'd never thought possible. "Play something happy," she requested. He raised an eyebrow. "I don't know happy music." "Learned some." For me, his smile was soft. "For you, I'd learn anything." He played something lighter, a melody that danced rather than mourned. Isabella watched his hands on the keys, remembering those same hands on her body, holding her close, keeping her safe. "I love you," she said. The music stopped abruptly. His head turned sharply toward her. "What? I love you? I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe that first morning you kissed me. Maybe watching you help my family. Maybe last week when you fell asleep during a movie and snored on my shoulder. But it's true. I love you, Matteo." He stood, crossed to her, pulled her to her feet. "Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you. One more time." She laughed. "I love you, you ridiculous man." He kissed her deeply, desperately. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "I love you too. I think I've loved you since you called me out at our wedding dinner, refusing to be intimidated. But I didn't know how to say it. Didn't know if I had the right after everything I'd done." "You have the right." She cupped his face. "We both have the right to this, to being happy despite how we started." "Do you really believe that?" "Yes. The past doesn't have to define us. We can choose differently going forward." He rested his forehead against hers. "I choose you. Every day, I choose you. And I choose you." 8 months after their wedding, Isabella discovered she was pregnant. She'd suspected for a week, but hadn't said anything, needing to be sure, needing to process what this meant. A child, a permanent connection to Matteo, and this life she'd built from the ruins of her freedom. She told him over breakfast, just stated it plainly while he was reviewing documents. "I'm pregnant." His head snapped up, papers forgotten. "What?" "We're having a baby. I'm about 2 months along." Matteo stared at her, expression cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that might have been fear. Then he was moving, kneeling beside her chair, his hands covering her still flat stomach. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I saw the doctor yesterday. Everything looks healthy. A baby." He looked up at her, and there were tears in his eyes. "We're having a baby. How do you feel about it?" she asked gently. "Terrified." He laughed shakily. "Completely terrified. I don't know how to be a father. My own father was a monster. What if I'm like him? What if I hurt our child the way he hurt me?" "You won't." "How can you be sure? Because you're asking that question. Your father never would have. You're already different because you care about being different." Matteo pressed his face against her stomach. "I never thought I'd have this. A real family. Someone who loves me and a child to protect. You have it. We have it." He looked up at her. "Are you happy about this? Honestly?" "I'm scared too. I never planned to have children, especially not in these circumstances. But yes, I'm happy. This baby is wanted and will be loved. That's what matters." They spent the rest of the day making plans. Matteo immediately insisted on the best doctors, the safest security arrangements, everything to ensure she and the baby would be protected. It was excessive and endearing all at once. Isabella shared the news with her family, who were overjoyed. Sophia was especially excited about becoming an aunt. Even Marco, still wrestling with guilt over everything that had happened, smiled genuinely for the first time in months. As Isabella's pregnancy progressed, Matteo became even more protective. He attended every doctor's appointment, asked endless questions, read books on pregnancy and parenting with an intensity he usually reserved for business negotiations. He talked to her stomach every night, telling their unborn child about the world, about music and books, about all the things they'd experienced together. Isabella fell more in love with him, watching him prepare to be a father. This dangerous man, this criminal overlord, was transforming into someone soft and vulnerable and hopeful. The baby's room was decorated with care, Matteo insisting on painting it himself. Soft yellows and greens, gender neutral since they'd decided to be surprised. He built the crib by hand, reading instructions with the same focus he applied to million-dollar deals. One night in the 7th month, Isabella woke to find Matteo's side of the bed empty. She found him in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair they'd bought, staring at the empty crib. "What's wrong?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up. "I keep thinking about my mother, how she would have loved this, loved meeting her grandchild." Isabella sat on the arm of the chair, her hand stroking his hair. "Tell me about her. What was she like?" She was gentle, patient. She could find beauty in anything, even living with my father. She sang while she cooked. She collected flowers from the garden. She read to me every night, even when my father forbade it. She sounds wonderful. She was. His voice broke. And she died thinking she'd failed me. Failed to protect me from becoming what my father wanted. But she didn't fail. She's why you're capable of this, of love and gentleness, and caring about the man you'll become as a father. She's still with you in all the good parts. I hope so, because I want our child to know that softness, that kindness. I want to break the cycle. You will. We will together. At 38 weeks, Isabella went into labor. It was the middle of the night, and Matteo transformed from calm to panicked in seconds. He called everyone, the doctor, the security team, her family, even Luca, as if they all needed to know immediately that the baby was coming. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Matteo held her hand, his thumb stroking her knuckles like he had that first night at the gala, though now the gesture was unconscious comfort rather than performance. "You're doing amazing," he kept saying. "You're so strong. Just breathe." Labor was long and difficult. Matteo never left her side, coaching her through contractions, wiping her forehead, letting her squeeze his hand hard enough to hurt. When she screamed at him that this was his fault, he agreed completely and apologized profusely, making her laugh between contractions. Finally, after 14 hours, their daughter was born. Aria Valentini entered the world screaming, a tiny, perfect human with dark hair and her father's eyes. Matteo cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's absolutely perfect." Isabella held their daughter, exhausted and overwhelmed and completely in love. "Look what we made. Look what we created from all the broken pieces." Matteo touched Aria's tiny hand, and she grasped his finger with surprising strength. "Hello, little one. I'm your papa, and I promise you, I promise, I will never be to you what my father was to me. You will know love and safety and gentleness. You will choose your own path. You will be free in ways I never was." Isabella watched her husband fall completely in love with their daughter. This man who'd bought her like property, who'd forced her into marriage, who'd stolen her freedom, was now cradling a newborn with reverent tenderness. Life was complicated and strange and beautiful. Isabella's family visited, bringing flowers and tears and joy. Sophia held her niece with careful wonder. Her father apologized again for everything that had led to this moment, and for the first time, Isabella told him she forgave him. Because despite everything, despite the horrible beginning, she'd found something real, something worth keeping. That night, after everyone left and Aria slept in her hospital bassinet, Matteo lay beside Isabella on the narrow hospital bed. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For giving me this. For staying when you could have left. For seeing something in me worth loving. For making me want to be better. For giving me a family. Thank you for becoming someone I could love. For changing. For being honest. For building something real with me. Do you regret it? Any of it?" Isabella thought about the question honestly. "I regret how we started. I regret the choice being taken from me. But the outcome? Being here with you and our daughter? No, I don't regret where we ended up, even though I bought you. Even though. Because you also freed me in ways I didn't expect. Freed me to be more than I was. Showed me I was stronger than I knew." He kissed her softly. "I love you, Isabella Valentini. I love you too." Their daughter made small sounds in her sleep, and they both turned to watch her. This tiny person who represented everything they'd become, everything they'd built from darkness and force circumstances. "You know what the best part is?" Isabella whispered. "What?" "She'll never know the pain we went through to find each other. She'll grow up surrounded by love. She'll only know us as parents who adored her and each other. That's our gift to her. A better story than ours." Matteo's arms tightened around Isabella. "That's the best revenge, isn't it? Against everyone who tried to make us bitter and broken. We created something beautiful instead." "Yes," Isabella agreed, watching their daughter sleep peacefully, unaware of the complicated love story that had brought her into existence. "That's exactly what we did. We chose love, and love changed everything."